Joining us now for some market strategy, we have Jim Rogers with us. He's the CEO of Rogers Holdings, and he joins us in our Singapore studios. Jim, good to see you. Now, you've been very vocal about this, we know. You are of the view that Freddie and Fannie should fail.
They have failed. They have failed. They're just being bailed out by the United States government.
You think they shouldn't be bailed out?
They should not be bailed out. Christine, America's been around for 240 years or something as a republic. In that period of time, we built up debt of $5 trillion by elected officials. Now, we shouldn't have, but we did. Last weekend alone, we doubled the debt. $5 trillion more by people who are committing fraud, who are committing illegal activities, and now all of a sudden, not you, but all of us who are Americans are going to have to pay an extra $5 trillion in one weekend for private people who committed fraud. This is outrageous. Who are these people who are taking our money and doing this and ruining America?
Okay, just a matter of disclosure, what sort of position are you taking in the market? Are you short on Fannie and Freddie?
I've been short Fannie Mae since I first came here 3 years ago or 4 years ago. No, I have been short Fannie Mae, and I'm still short Fannie Mae.
So you're making some money in the market?
I'm making some money in Fannie Mae, yes. But listen, this is bad for America. Who cares if I make some money? I'll have to pay taxes on it. And it looks like we're all going to have to pay a lot of taxes because we literally double the national debt in one weekend from people who are not elected. Bernanke was not elected by anybody. Paulson was not elected by anybody. And the people who are running Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were not elected by anybody, and they were committing fraud. I mean, this is outrageous.
Jim, what alternative is there to coming in and propping them up? They play a critical role in the mortgage market. If you don't have them buying up mortgages, that's going to just keep our housing that much worse.
Bertha, we've had Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac around for 60 or 70 years or so far. Let's say they fail. Of course, it throws America into a worse recession than we have. But let's say they don't fail, Bertha. We've doubled the national debt by $5 trillion in one weekend. Who's going to pay that off? The U.S. dollar's going to suffer. Inflation's going to suffer. The recession's going to be worse. And in 2 years or 3 years, when there's 6 other people who are failing, America's not going to have any bullets left to save the next 6 or 8 people who go bankrupt. This is not going to solve any problems. This is going to make them worse. Is your solution that we just put another Band-Aid on, a Band-Aid here, or a Band-Aid here? The patient has cancer, Bertha. Giving more Band-Aids is not going to solve the problem.
But at the same time, just letting the patient sit there and suffer is not going to help the problem either, is it? What do we do?
Let the patient go bankrupt.
And then what?
Wait a minute, let the patient
and then
let the patient go bankrupt.
What happens to mortgages? Who buys them up?
We have courts in America. They will be reorganized. Wait a minute, who bought the mortgages before? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have only been big in the mortgage market in the past 10 years. Before that, they were small, obscure federal agencies. And by the way, in the meantime, we have the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, which is buying up a whole lot of these things. And we have Ginnie Mae, who are still solvent and still in operation. And if we don't do it, what is your solution? Just to keep going in the same way? Buying up more and more mortgages of failed houses? Most Americans have paid their mortgages. Most Americans have lived a proper life. They didn't go out and buy a bunch of garbage and try to defraud the system. I feel a little bit agitated that I suddenly have to pay for people who've been doing things not the legitimate way. And yes, Bertha, you're right. It would cause problems in the economy, but we've got problems in the economy anyway.
But it would cause problems in the economy, not just here. I mean, there's an argument to be made that some of this is also a failure of confidence. And a lot of folks, there are people who would say they're short sellers like you that are talking down these companies and out there saying that they're insolvent, when in fact they have reserves that are above their mandates.
Well, please, Bertha, I would urge you to pull out their balance sheet. If you think that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are solvent, then I urge you to get a balance sheet and examine it, or to get somebody who can explain it to you. Fannie Mae is not solvent. I mean, even Poole, the Federal Reserve, has acknowledged that they're not solvent. If you're blaming all this on short sellers, then you should have another job.
Jim, it's Ross here. Look, this solvency test, right? If we apply today's market-to-market solvency test, a bank has to sell, if it's overnight, to liquidate all its assets and liabilities overnight and pay the shareholders back. Every bank since the Medicis would have been insolvent. Yeah?
Well, I'm short lots of banks. I'm short lots of banks.
We wouldn't have got through the 82 debt crisis, would we?
But Ross, so your solution is that we just continue business as normal?
What I'm saying is there are some instances, Jim, where you cannot have risk systemic failure, right? Because I mean that is far worse. And you talk about 5 trillion of debt, right, Jim? But it's backed by 5 trillion of mortgages now. Most of which are prime, most Americans, as you say, they're paying the mortgage every month, they're going to pay that debt down. So 5 trillion is a bit disingenuous, isn't it?
Well, if you say that there are 5 trillion of prime, then you know something the rest of us don't know. If that's the only problem, if they're all prime mortgage, then there's no problem. Fannie Mae should be back at $60 next week. For some reason, the market seems to know something you don't know, Ross. Most of us don't think that there are 5 trillion of prime mortgages.
But Jim, they've got no problem raising funds. Even last week, Fannie Mae and Freddie were in the market raising money.
They certainly were. The Treasury was on the phone to everybody, every bank in America, saying, buy these bonds. You know that as well as I do.
All right, Jim, let's
In fact, I suspect they called you, Ross. I bet they called you, and you probably had to buy some bonds too, didn't you?
They called me on, Jim, they called me on Independence Day.
Right, I'm sure you all had to buy some bonds. They couldn't find my phone number. They'd have been calling me too.
Jim, let's move on and talk about commodities and the dollar here. Everyone's watching this play between the dollar and oil. Some days it seems as though oil is the tail wagging the dog. Some days it's the dollar. Where do you see that going, and where do you see that trade going right now?
Well, the surprise is going to be, Bertha, how high the price of oil stays and how high it goes ultimately, because there's been no major gigantic oil field discovered in over 40 years. All the major oil fields in the world are in decline. I mean, these are simple facts. We could have corrections, as you probably know. In the last 9 years of the bull market for oil, we've had 3 times when oil went down 40 or 50%. Normal corrections. It could happen again, and it probably will happen again somewhere along the line. But that's not going to end the bull market. We've got to discover a lot of oil quickly, Bertha. We got to discover a lot of oil quickly, or the world's going to continue to have serious problems.
So you're buying oil, Jim?
No, I'm not buying oil. No, oil's at all-time high. I don't like to buy things at all-time highs.
So what are you buying then?
Well, I'm buying airlines. I'm buying...
You're buying airlines?
Yes.
But oil prices are going up. You're buying airlines?
Yes.
Why?
Well, if you fly a lot, you'll see that there's nobody... I mean, you can't get a seat. The rates are all going higher and higher. All the airlines are taking the planes, the high-cost planes, out of production or out of use, and it's getting very, very tight out there. The capacity is coming down, and the demand is still here. Maybe we're all going to start taking the boat to Europe again. Maybe we're all going to take the boat to America, but unless that happens, airlines probably have a much better future.
Are you still buying Chinese stocks? Because I know you're pretty bullish on the Chinese equity market.
Well, I'm waiting for what I hope is going to be a selling climax. It looks like
Isn't there one now?
We may get one. Chinese shares were down 20% last month alone. That looks like a selling climax developing, and if it continues, and if we have a selling climax, I plan to buy Taiwan and China. Taiwan I've never bought in my whole life, and I'm 65 years old, but I think for the first time in my life there's going to be peace, and if there's really going to be peace, then Taiwan is a wonderful place to invest.
All right, we will leave it on that note. Jim Rogers, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Jim Rogers, CEO of Rogers Holdings.